Alright, Daf Kuf Yud Gimel. This is Freitag's Daf. And let's pick it up on Kuf Yud Beis Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom, as we continue to talk a little bit more about Malicha. Rav Mari Bar Rochel, Im Lachle Basar Shchuta Bahari Basar Treifa. That Rami Bar Rochel one time did the Malicha, did the salting, on meat that was in a keli that was both Shchuta and Nevela. So Asal Kamei de Rava, to see if now did he ruin the Basar Shchut. And what's going on here with the Shaila is that the dam that comes out of the Treifa meat doesn't go into the kosher meat. Because the kosher meat is being pilate, it's putting out its own dam, and therefore it's not going to absorb the dam of the treifa meat. So that's not really a problem. But the way Rashi understands the Gemara Shaila is you have these other liquids, the tzir, the juices of the treifa meat, maybe the geshacht in a basar that is being pilate and therefore prevents it from absorbing, that only takes care of the dam, but not of these other juices. That's how Rashi understands the Shaila. The Rashba has a different way of understanding the Shaila, but we'll go with Rashi. So also lekamei de Rava, what's going to be with this meat? Amar lezok Rava, the pasuk says by shratzim, hatimeim, with an extra hay to make a ribui, les or tziron, v'roitban, v'kipa shalohen. That by shratzim, not just their usser, but their liquids and all kinds of parts of them are all going to be usser. And even though we're talking about shratzim, the Ritva speaks out that the Gemara is understanding that this is also going to be for meat, that just like by the shratzim, you need to be concerned with these different juices that come out of the shratzim. The same thing by the treifa meat. The juice that comes out of it can be absorbed into the basar shchuta, creating a problem and asering it. Now, just to point out an important taisvis at the bottom, where the second to bottom taisvis wants to know, whatever happened to Tam Ke'ikr? Why do we need a pasuk saying by hashratzim that the juices of shratzim are going to be usser? L'chayr, it's Tam Ke'ikr, like we've been saying all along. So there are some Rishonim that just get out of the kasha by saying Tam Ke'ikr is not deraisa. So you need a pasuk to tell you that it's even usser with deraisa. But Taisus isn't going with that. And Taisus makes the chiluk between the solids and liquids, and that's what I need the drasha for. Moving over to Amud Aleph, frek the Gemara. Why do I need a drasha to tell me that the basar shchuta is going to be usser because it's absorbing the juices from the basar treifa? V'lei malei midish Shmuel. This halach of Shmuel that we've quoted a couple times. Amar Shmuel, moliach harehu kereseach, and kavush harehu kemevoshel. So since malicha is like as if it's hot, and kavush, when it's soaking in it, it's as if it's cooked. So too, when you salt both the shchuta and the treifa together, it should have that same din of Shmuel to aser it, which the Gemara says no, because you can't apply Shmuel. Ima de Shmuel, havamina hanimili daman, that's only about dam, which is going to be be'etzem aser. Avol tzirin v'roit bon loy, but not the juices that come out of the animal that might actually not be so aser. Kamash mon zok rava, that they're taka aser, and that's why it's going to be a problem. Correct the Gemara meisvei from a brisa, dag tohar shemolche im dag tomei is mutter. So you have a kosher fish that was salted with a not kosher fish, it'll be mutter. Now, my lav shahayu shnehen maluchin. Aren't we talking about where they were both already salted, which is l'chayr what the Bryce is saying, and yet still we're being matter the kosher fish, even though the melach, the salt, is extracting juices from the not kosher fish that go into the kosher fish. And therefore we should say, even by Rava's case, the not kosher juices from the treifa don't treif up the basar shchuta. To which the Gemara says, no, you're not reading the Bryce right. We're talking about where the kosher fish was already salted, but the non-kosher fish was unsalted. So in that case, the unsalted non-kosher fish isn't being pilot anything usser. Well, frek the Gemara, B'hamadik Tani Seifa, that Brisa says, going with the Girsa change here, Hayat tahar moliach v'tamei tafel mutter. If the kosher fish was salted and the not kosher fish was not salted, it'll be mutter. But mechlal, Daresh B'sheshnei Maluch Maskinan. From the very fact that later in the Brisa it has to say that, it must be that in the beginning part, both of them are being salted. To which the Gemara says, no, Parushe Ka Mefarish. The end of the Brisa is explaining the first part of the Brisa. And this is how you read it. Tahar shemolcha im dag tamei mutter ketzad. Shaya tar moliach v'tamei tafel. And hachinami mistabra, that the end of the Brisa is only explaining the first part of the Brisa. Disal kadaitach reisha shnei maluchim. If you're talking about where both of them were actually already salted, and the Brisa is saying that that's mutter, what would be the point of continuing to talk about when the kosher fish was salted and the non-kosher one was unsalted? Hashta shnei maluchim shari. Tar moliach v'tamei tafel mi boy. You'd need the Brisa to tell me that when the kosher fish is salted and the not kosher fish is unsalted, that the kosher fish is mutter. Versteht it's pashut. And so it must be that the sefer of the Brisa was only coming to explain the first part of the Brisa. Frek the Gemara. Imishum ha lo area. It's not so pashut, like the Gemara, because it really could have been that the first part of the Brisa is taka being matter the kosher fish even when both are salted. You want to tie into that? What's the chiddush of the sefer? Tana sefer legluya reisha, which we often find that that's a structure of a Brisa. Delay tema reisha tahar moliach v'tamei tafel. Don't say that the reisha of the Brisa is talking about where the kosher fish is salted and the non-kosher fish was unsalted, and only then is when the kosher fish is going to be mutter. Aval shnehem maluchim is going to be aser, because that's what I might have thought, because it's going to absorb the juice even while it's being pilate, like Rava had said. Therefore, Tana sefer tahar moliach v'tamei tafel is a separate halacha, being matter that kosher fish when the kosher fish is salted and the not kosher fish is unsalted. Mechlal dereisha shnein maluchin, to tell us that the first case in the reisha was talking about where both were salted. Vafilu hachishari. So basically, you can't bring a raya from the Brisa because you can get out of either way, and therefore it's not a kasha on Rava. Toshma Meseifa de Seifa. But there's a third part of the brisa. Avol im hayatame moliach v'tahar tafel aser. In a case when the non-kosher fish was salted, but the kosher fish was unsalted, then it's going to be aser. Mashma, tame moliach v'tahar tafel hu de aser. But hashnei and meluchin will be shari. It's the opposite diak now. Which the Gemara says, Aidi de tana reisha tar moliach v'tamei tafel. Tana nami seifa tamei moliach v'tahar tafel. But Enochnami the Bryce would still hold that the kosher fish is going to be aser even if both of them were moliach. Okay, so we have no raya. Simin Bisra de Monach Nafkusa. All right, we all know that dam is usr, but we tend to think that dam is always going to be usr. But the truth is, it's not so simple. If you take a raw piece of meat where the dam has never come out of it, it's actually not usr. It's not so sanitary, but you could technically take a bite out of a piece of raw meat even though the dam is still inside. That's called dame varm shaloi perish. Once it becomes dame varm sheperish, that the dam comes out, then it gets the isser kares of dam. Now Zok Shmuel. Amar Shmuel ein habasar yaitze midei damai ele imkein melcha yafa yafa. So this coming out, the dam that comes out, it only happens when it's yafe yafe. That only happens when it's salted yafe yafe. Umedichai yafe yafe. And it has to be rinsed off yafe yafe. Now, the definition of yafe yafe is a tumul in the Rishonim. The Rush says all area of the meat has to be covered with salt. The Rajba quotes from the Gemara from yesterday that it has to be done so much salt that because of that salt, you wouldn't be able to eat it. And I believe we're machmer to try to be able to all the different shittas of what molcha yafa yafa means. According to the Rush, that the entire surface of the meat have to be covered with salt. It could be on both sides of the meat. The Margolius Hashas brings from one of the Rebbes that when you have a shidduch and people say that the shidduch should be oila yafa yafa, the double lashon of yafa yafa could be a reference to this sugya, that just like when you're moliach yafa yafa, you have to do both sides of the meat. The bracha is that everything should go very well on both sides of the shidduch, meaning for both chas and kala, for both muchatanim, everything should be oila yafa yafa. So that's a cute little chassidish art covered my daughter's recent engagement. But you also have to rinse it off. And the Pri Megadim has like a whole kuntras on just the malicha, where he actually lists 6 reasons why you have to do the hadacha besides the malicha, most obvious of which is that the hadacha will take the blood that's already been extracted and it'll remove it, and the malicha pulls the dam out of the meat that's on the inside. Itmar. Rav Huna Omer, Mailech umediach. You salt it and then you rinse it, but Masnisa Tana, in the Bryce it says madiach, first you rinse it, umailech, umaidiach. So it's a 3-step process of rinsing it, salting it, and then rinsing it again. And the Ran learns because if you don't first wash it, the blood will harden and make it harder for the salt to do its job. So first it has to be rinsed off. V'lei pligi. And Rav Huna and the Bryce are really not arguing. Had chalale bei tabacha. When Rav Huna doesn't say anything about rinsing it first, he's talking about where it was already rinsed off at the butcher shop. So that's why you don't have to rinse it when you get home. But had chalale bei tabacha. But the Bryce is talking about where it was mamish, just a fresh piece of geshacht and a fleish. So first you rinse it, then you salt it, and then you rinse it again. Rav Dimi min Arda, molach le b'milcha kilal nisa u'menafetz le. So Rav Dimi min Arda, he would salt the meat with very thick salt. I guess he used kosher salt. And then he would shake off that salt, because now that salt has absorbed all the blood. As opposed to if you use thinner salt, the salt itself dissolves, and therefore you don't have to shake it off before you wash the meat. Omer of Mesharshia, ein machzikin dam bebnei me'ayim. You don't have to assume there's any dam inside the intestines of the animal. It sounds like lechatchila you should, but you're not mechuyev to check. So the Gemara Tirgama, akarkasha umeaya, v'hadra dechansa. These different parts of the innards of the animal, stomachs and intestines, etc., are where you don't have to be chayshish for dam. Omar Shmuel, ein menichin basar maliach ela al gabe kli menukav. When you do malicha, the kind of surface that you put the meat on has to be a surface with holes on it, so this way the dam goes out through the holes and doesn't pool around the meat, because we obviously don't want it to reabsorb that blood. Rav Sheshis malach le garma garma. When Rav Sheshis would do his malicha, he would do it one piece at a time. He wouldn't put lots of pieces into the same keli, but he would do each one separately. Trey my time aloi. Why didn't he want to salt 2 pieces together? Mishum, the parsh mahayo bolahai. He was afraid that the dam would come out of one piece and would go into the other piece. For the Gemara, chad nami, even by one piece, parsh mehai gisa, the dam would come out of one side, ubola hai gisa, and go into the other side. Elolei shna, Vaises, we're not concerned about it, and therefore you don't have to worry about doing one piece at a time. And now this is the third halacha of Shmuel. Amar Shmuel mishum Rabbi Chia, hashayver mefrakta shel behema kodim shetetzei nafsha. If somebody who shechts an animal immediately breaks the animal's neck, harizeh machbedes habasar, you're making the meat very heavy, v'goizel sabriyos, umavli adam be'evarim. What's happening is when you shecht an animal, all the dam rushes out through the neck, and that's using the last throes of strength of the animal to push that blood out. But if you go ahead and break the animal's neck, the animal's unable to do that. The blood gets absorbed into the busser of the animal. It's not a kashrus problem because you're going to do the malicha and get the dam out, but what's happening is the meat is unnaturally heavy from all that dam, and therefore when the butchers are selling that meat by weight, they're actually overcharging, and therefore there's a gzela from the briyos. Frekting Mari Bailu, Hechi Kamer, what is Shmuel saying? Machbedes habasar Basar v'Geisel Sabrius Mishum Demavli Adam Be'evarim, Ober Holy Day Shaper Dummy. But if you're shechting for yourself and you're not selling it to a reseller, it's okay. And you shouldn't even do it for yourself because maybe you're causing a problem for that malicha later on. Which the Gemara says, Teku. Zok the Mishnah, getting back to Hilchos Basar v'Chalav. Hamale es ha'oif im hagvina ala shulchan. If someone puts up their basar oif and cheese on the table, there is no Isra Basar v'Chalav, which sounds like Zok the Gemara ha'ochloi oiver b'leisasei. Making simple dig from the Mishnah that if you eat Basar v'Chalav, you are going to be oiver in Isra deraisa, which is taking sides. Shma mina basar oif b'Chalav is deraisa, which the Gemara says is nishkein raya from the Mishnah because ema hamala es ha'oif im hagvina al hashulchan eina bolidei leisasei. You have no problem putting cheese and chicken on the same table because there can't even be a leisasei if you tried. Chicken and milk is just not asur midaraisa, so you don't have a raya from the Mishnah. Zokt the Mishnah, getting into the meat of the Isser of Basar b'Chalav. And we can see what I just did there. Basar behema tahira b'chalav behema tahira. When we talk about the Isser Basar b'Chalav, we're talking about the meat of a kosher animal and the milk of a kosher animal. That's going to be Asr levashel v'Asr b'hana. But Basar behema tahira b'chalev behema tameya. So the milk is from a not kosher animal, or Basar behema tameya, or the meat's from a not kosher animal b'chalev behema tahira. If you're mixing and matching the kosher and not kosher elements here, mutter levashel, it's going to be mutter, it's the Isser of Bishul Basar b'Chalav, mutter b'hana. We're not going to go so far as to say you can eat it because it's after all not kosher, but it's not going to be the Isser Basar b'Chalav. Rabbi Kiva Aimer, Chaya v'Oif eina min ha'Torah. It's only going to be a behema, like a gedi, but not a chaya or an oif. Shenamar lo savashel gedi b'chalev imay shalosh pa'amim. It says it 3 times. Prat lechaya ula'oif ubehema tameya. Those are the 3 mutim that Rabbi Kiva learns from the pasuk. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Aimer, Namar, it says in pasuk, lo yisaychlu kol nevela. V'namar, it says right afterwards, lo savashel gedi b'chalev imay. So we make a hekesh. Es she'asur mishum nevela, that which is asur to eat als nevela, asur levashel b'chalav, and therefore oif she'asur mishum nevela. Birds don't have chalev imay, and therefore there won't be any Yisr Basar b'Chalav by Basar Oif. But a chaya is shaykh to an Yisr nevela, and therefore, according to B'Yossi Glili, there will be the Yisr Basar b'Chalav for the Basar chaya, just not Basar Oif. Okay, but it's very clear from the pasuk that when it says Lo Savashel Gedi b'Chalev imay, Gedi does not only mean a Gedi. So Minoni Mili, Zok Rashi, how do you know that a Gedi is not just talking about a Gedi, but also all behemoths? Amar Rabbi Lazar, Omar Krad, pasuk says by Yehuda and Tamar, by Yishlach, Yehuda as Gedi ha'izim, turning over Tamid Beis. So it sounds like kan Gedi izim, that actual redundancy in the pasuk of Gedi izim, of goats. But hakol mokum shenemar Gedi stam, whenever it just says the word Gedi without specifying what Gedi is referring to, Gedi is a more general term. Afilu para v'rachel b'mashma. It's going to be other kinds of animals, other kind of behemoths. Frekting mar v'neil minei. Let's learn out from this that Gedi always means just goats. And for the Gemara, ksiv kro achrina. Ve'es oireis Godiye ha'izim. When Rivka Imenu put the Gediye izim on the arms of Yaakov to make it seem like he was Esav, it called it Gediye ha'izim, which sounds like kan Gediye ha'izim, hakol mokum shnamar Gedi is stam, afilu para v'rachel b'mashma. Well, frekting mar v'leil minei. Let's learn that from that pasuk by Rivka and Yaakov, with that whenever you have the word Gedi by itself, it's talking only about this goat. And for the Gemara, haveluhu shnei ksuvin haboyin ki echad, v'chol shnei ksuvin haboyin ki echad ein malamdin. Therefore, you can't use that as a basis to learn that to the chol terakula. Full frekting mar hanich lamandamar ein malamdin, el lamandamar malamdin ma'ikal ameimar. And for the Gemara, trei meyute ksivi izim ha'izim. It doesn't say izim in the pasuk; it says ha'izim. So the extra hey is an extra miyut, telling us that only in these locations, by Yehuda and by Rivka, it was referring to specifically izim, but everywhere else, it will include other kinds of behemoths. Omar Shmuel, Gedi. So we're going to darshan l'rabbi says ha'chelev, that if you cook the chelev, the fat, where there's an isser kares with milk, you're going to be over both the isser of chelev and basar b'chalav. Gedi is l'rabbi says ha'mesa. Even an animal that died without shchita will be having isser basar b'chalav. Gedi is also l'rabbi says ha'shlil, the basar of an unborn fetus that's inside the mother when it's geshachten will also have isser basar b'chalav. Gedi is l'haitzias adam, that if you cook dam with milk and eat it, you're not going to be chayiv for basar b'chalav. Gedi is l'haitzias ha'shilya, that there's no isser basar b'chalav if you cook the shilya, the placenta, with milk. Gedi is l'haitzias ha'tameya, that there's a miyut for a behemoth that's not kosher if you cook that with milk. And b'chalevi mai, that's only with mother's milk, as opposed to v'loy b'chalav zachar. If somehow a male animal was able to develop the ability to create chalav, it would not be isser basar b'chalav. And b'chalev imai is also v'loy b'chalev shchuta, meaning milk that came out of a shchuta after it was geshacht, and that will not be considered the kind of chalav that would be asur midaraisa. B'chalev imai v'loy b'chalev tameya, not the milk of a not kosher animal. So we have all these different drushes that we're making out of the pasuk of leisavashel gedi b'chalev imai. Frekta Gemara, hatalasa gedi ksivi. It says the word gedi 3 times in the pasuk. Va'anan, she said darshinim, but you made 6 different drushes out of that same 3 words. So kasavar shmuel isser chalal isser. The isser chelev umesa mechad kronafki. Therefore, it's really the same isser. Both the Isser of Chelev and Cholav and the Isser of Nevela with Cholav is really all the same pasuk. Because as the Gemara is saying, Shmuel has no problem with Isser Chalal Isser, we didn't need another drasha. The Rishonim jump on this Gemara because why are we coming out to Shmuel holds Isser Chalal Isser? Why don't we just say this is an Isser Maisif? Because we're adding Isser Hana. And the Rishonim give different terutzim. There is a famous Rambam in the Parish Mishnayos, third parak of Krisis, that says his Nekuda Nifla, as he calls it, that since the Isser Hana is Neveya from the Isser Achila, we don't call that an Isser Maisif. But anyway, the first example of why we're not making too many drashas from the word Gedi is because Isser Chelev and Nevela is coming from the same pasuk. And Dam Nami, Lav Gedihu, is actually not one of the Gedis. Vishilya Nami also, they don't need drashas because Pirsha Ba'almahu. It's just extra stuff that comes out of the animal. Both the Dam and the Shilya is already Bechlal, Basar B'chalav, because neither one is Bechlal the word Gedi. And therefore really you wouldn't need a drush in the first place to be Mamayat them. So Pashlu Trey, there's two more times it says the word Gedi in the pasuk that we can darshan. Chad l'Rabba is Ashlil, to include the unborn fetus. Chad l'Miyute Behemet Tameya, to be Mamayat the meat of a non-kosher animal that there's no Basar B'chalav. Correct the Gemara V'Savar Shmuel Isser Chal Isser. Is that really true? The Yomer Shmuel Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. Minayin l'kayin tamei she'achol truma tamei she'ena b'misa. How do you know that a kayin who is tamei, who ate truma that's not tamei, is not going to be chayiv misa b'nei shemayim shene'emar umesu bay ki chalaluhu? That the kayin's mechuyev misa because he was machala prat lazush mechulelas v'medes. That only in this case he's going to be chayiv misa b'nei shemayim because the truma was already tamei before the kayin ate it. And the Gemara is saying that since we're acknowledging there was a previous isser of truma tamei because ein isser chal al isser, and that's Shmuel's memras. Don't tell me Shmuel holds isser is chal al isser. Iba yasema bialma isser chal al isser v'shani hosam. Maybe that's the unique exception. Dimiyat rachman umesu bay. That dafka mesu bay only by truma tahira, which is now currently being mechulel. That's when a tamei who eats is going to be mechuyev b'dei shamayim. Or Iba yasema bialma kasaver Shmuel ein isser chal al isser. But the exception to the rule is by us by leisavashal gedi b'chalei v'imay v'shani hachadu Rabbi Rachmana gedi, because the Torah made a special riboy of chelev and nevela by basar b'chalav. Or Iba yasema hadidei hadarabei. What Shmuel was saying by basar b'chalav was his own shita, but what Shmuel was saying b'shem Rabbi Eliezer by truma tameya, that was really the shita of Rabbi Eliezer, his Rebbe. And this is where we're going to call it, and we'll pick it up with Boy Minei for Shabbos' daf.